Hey, hello everyone. Finally, you opened this video. Welcome to our Principle of Microeconomics, which is ECO 2023. If you have taken my Principle of Macroeconomics, ECO 2023, you can choose to skip chapter 1 and 2 because those are very similar, or let's say that the contents are very exactly the same. Okay, generally speaking, if we are talking about the economics, and then we know that in theory we talk about that the individual. Let's say that we make decision or we make optimized decision based upon the limited resource or scarcity, right? And then also like possibly that make decision with the budget constraint. What you're gonna do with what you have. So, or let's say that in other words, individual, household, also like the business, and then even to like a society, our economy, to make the decision based upon that the resource we have. The micro and the macro, the difference is like the two sides of the spectrum. The micro, this class, we are more focused on the individual level, individual person, individual household, or let's say the individual business. We are making decision. It can be like the consumption decision, and then also it can be the production decision. For example, that if you have a startup, a small company, what product, and then what about the quantity you produce based upon the market situation, okay? And then also based upon your production cost. This is what we want to cover in the micro. These are different from the macro. Macro is about the aggregate level, about the economy. Give you like chapter 1 and 2 is very straightforward. I just use different, they say that the opening for the chapter 1 and 2. But anyway, so the rest are exactly the same, that I just use my previous, let's say that the recording, and then to explain you what is inside this introduction to economics. Okay, so let's move on. Back to what we covered today in this short video. It's about the economics. And then also like I will explain you about the micro and then about macro. Okay, so given the definition, although I don't want to really read through this definition, but I think it's more like to explain you to relate it to the real life. Okay, so usually like we say that economics is about the decision making once you have constraints, you have in this case is we call the scarcity, right? And then that means that usually you want to buy products, you want to buy different foods, and then you want to purchase the service, but you have limited money, so you cannot fulfill or you cannot satisfy yourself enough. But on the other side, that if we are talking about the supply, you are more like offer your labor, you offer your time to work either part-time or full-time, but at that time that you are making money, right? You get the money as like a salary or wage, but usually you also have to face this limited resource, meaning you have limited time. One day is 24 hours. You cannot work more than 24 hours, right? So that's maximum. But usually I would say that from this, first of all, economics is about everything, which is happening in your life, in my life, in the society. So actually we are living in a economic system that we have all the activities related to this topic. But again, that if we are talking about the micro and then the macro, those are different. One is regarding the individual level, one is regarding the aggregate level. So I will mention this later. But one thing has been, although this definition hasn't been changed for a long time, because I will introduce you some, the founding father, let me call him Adam Smith as the founding father of economics, but I will leave it, let's say, a little late. But nowadays, everything has been changed. Why? Because of the information and the technology. So why I say so? First of all, that before, like for example, if you want to learn something new, you have to ask some, let's say, experts, right? Or you go to the library to check before we have the internet, before we have Google's. But nowadays that the information is, how to say, flooding into our life. And then we have so many informations available to us. Now it become like how we can, first the question is how we can collect the information. The second is how we can select the right information. And then about how to process or proceed or analyzing those information. It becomes very different from before. Now I think the challenge has been changed from like before it's people are like getting the information from different sources. If they have some insider information, they will take advantage. But nowadays, if we are sensitive enough, and then we can collect all the information from the internet, from Google, everywhere, right? Remember, like a couple weeks ago, we have seen like the first time negative price of oil, the gas future contract, which was below like almost negative $40 per barrel. That was never happened. But if we see something that we already collect some information before, I mean, the CME group had started to test the negative, mechanism behind this future contract transaction. Well, probably you would realize that, whoa, this is something which would be happening. Okay, so but anyway, so I just want to remind you that nowadays the information is, it's very easy to get the information. Now the challenge become what information we're looking for, and then how we can analyze this. And the most important thing is not we apply our knowledge on this, we understand this, right? Use our, those theories, those economic knowledge, we understand all the situation. But now it become a new challenge that how we can use those information and then analyze those information. And the critical point is how we can predict the future. So as I said that I want to use the stock market, I want to use some like the real estate market information to explain some of the economic phenomena. So this guy, I think some of you might have noticed, or you have know him before. It's Adam Smith. He wrote a book. In short, it's titled The Wealth of Nations. So this is the first book that we have, in this economic history. But honestly, this is more like a classic. We call this a classic economics book, all right? And then because it was like in the, let's say it's here, it's 1776 book, right? And then it talked about the industry revolution. It talks about the division of labor, productivity, and then free market. And then also it offers like use a terminology like invisible hands. So how to understand this invisible hands? It's regarding the self-interest, which about everyone that we have our own self-interest, right? Everyone wants to maximize. One hand, usually we use a term called utility, meaning that once we consume or purchase service, we have gained something utility. It's invisible, but anyway, so this is the one that we use most often in our economic study. And then also we have so-called the profit. That one will be much easier to understand, right? So if you are a company, if you are running a startup, small company business, and then you want to maximize your profit. Those are like, there's a driver behind that. It use like the invisible hands, right? So, and then this is driving us to optimize, to maximize, and then to get the optimal result. This is what this is about. Idea is about, we call this the industrial revolution, which is, it's about the productivity, right? It's about the efficiency, but also it's about the specialization, like, workers will work on particular tasks and then specialize on it, and then they can maximize. This is from the production side. they can maximize their, productivity, something like that. And then also from a business perspective, it's about the economies of scale. You can group all this. Let's say once the company become bigger and bigger, they have this so-called the market power, or let's say negotiation power, so they can take the advantage by getting, sell it at a high price and then get the import at a lower price. So it's more like they can take the advantage by growing, not for the individual, employee, but also for the business as a whole. Okay? For me, that the most important thing is based upon this, as I mentioned, in other videos, that I want to connect you to the real life, to the real scenario. And then first off, for me, this is important. It's more like we have this knowledge, all right? So, and also I want to, share with you some financial knowledge as well. So we need this economic literacy. We need the financial literacy. The first purpose is you understand how this world, how this society is operating, right? And then also, you guys are all the potential management, in the future. So you need to understand what is happening and then how this apply to your business. Or let's say, I don't go that further, how it applies to yourself, right? What job you are looking for, what you should prepare yourself at this moment for the future. What is the best industry, or what is a good industry that you can pursue? So in the previous class, I always told them, after this coronavirus pandemic, cruise line industry become a very problematic industry. So you need to think about that yourself. So although those two, I think this is, nobody really explained that, but for me that the micro is more like for the individual, either individual person or individual business. It's more like still it's regarding the demand and supply, analyze the cost, the profit, analyze your utility, your consumption utility. But this is more like focus on the individual. In this case, it's called individual agent. All right, so at the micro level, that we treat everyone different, and then we can start to use some, let me call this mathematical way or econometric way to analyze, or to, let's say, to connect the relation from price to quantity consumed or quantity produced or whatever. So this is on the individual level. But macroeconomics, as this class about, is, at the aggregate level. We treat the country as a whole, or we treat the world as a whole. So since this is a principal level, so I won't talk too much about the international trade or other countries, but we base upon US, we analyze the US domestic economy. So we're more like expand from there. And then we talk about the GDP, we talk about the economic growth within this country, and also some of the government policies or monetary policy, fiscal policies. So we stay in this country. But since I'm from China, that I want to use China as more like a, you call a competitor, or you call enemy, or whatever. So for me, this is more like a comparison between two countries. Okay, so keep in mind that the macroeconomics is on like a aggregate level, so that we put everything into one system. And then we call this more like, again, we have this demand and supply. This is not new for you, but this demand we call the aggregate demand, aggregate supply. So this, usually I call this ADAS model. This is, just keep in mind, we put everything together, we treat everything as a whole, and then become like, oh, this whole country, this whole economy has a demand curve, has a supply curve. So in that case, that I can, start our discussion. Monetary policy is about the money, about the how. I mean, from this term, you see that how the country, or U.S. central bank, which is the Federal Reserve, to help the economy, back from the recession, right?
And then also the fiscal policy is about the government spending and how they collect the tax. So the fiscal policy is more like how the government borrowing money and then spend it to boost our economy. So as you can tell that at this moment, a lot of things is happening. And then the monetary policy by the Federal Reserve and then the fiscal policy by our government, like the recent, the relief paycheck to almost every household. This is one of the fiscal policies they are applying at this moment. In order to make sure that you don't get bored quickly, that I just keep it as short as possible. And then you move on to the next small section. But I try to use modularize everything that you know that this week 1, week 2, what we should do, what we covered. Okay, so I will see you next time. Have a great one.